Skinamarink is a 2022 micro-budget horror movie. Kind of. It's written and directed by a Canadian fella named Kyle Edward Ball. The movie premiered at the 26th Fantasia Film Festival on July 25, 2022. It's releasing in North American theaters mid-January, and it'll be on Shudder shortly thereafter.
For whatever they're worth, preliminary comments on Skinamarink have been more than positive. In fact, they've contained all of the buzzwords we horror fans swarm to, which may or may not be a coincidence. And one thing that everyone who's seen it has said is that it is not going to be for everyone, and that's telling. Some people who've already seen it thought it contains some of the most unsettling imagery they've seen in a very long time. Another viewer commented on the movie's ability to transport you back to your childhood home and leave you there. All of these are very interesting observations, but the comment that really caught my attention was far more understated, or at least it seemed so initially. Films like this come along once in a generation. So, it's independent, it's low budget, it's horrifying, it's not for everyone, and it comes along once in a generation. This pre-release description reminds me of something I can't quite put my finger on. That's it! We'll come back to that in a few minutes after we've taken a look at Skinamarink. And don't worry about spoilers, it's not that kind of movie.
The plot.
The movie focuses on two young children who wake up, go looking for their father, and while they're searching for him, they realize the doors and the windows of their house are missing.
There you have it, folks, the plot to Skinamarink.
If you don't know who Kyle Edward Ball is, he has a YouTube channel where he attempts to turn people's nightmares into short video clips. I've included a link to his channel down below.
So, Skinamarink is an attempt to recreate one of the most common nightmares reported by his viewers. And I quote,
"I'm between the ages of 6 and 10. I'm in my house. My parents are either dead or missing. There's a threat I have to deal with."
The idea resonated with Kyle because he's had the same vivid nightmare himself. So he decided to see if his style of video could bring the dream to life. And Skinamarink is what he came up with. The whole thing took 7 days to shoot. Kyle used modern technology to give the movie a 1970s home video aesthetic that feels claustrophobic and hallucinatory at times. He's essentially replaced traditional narrative and structure with atmospheric imagery and sound effects, to the extent the movie is nearly a series of still photographs. A lot of the runtime spent exploring and examining the house, but instead of actually pointing the camera directly at anything, it encourages you to wonder about what you're not being shown. And in this sense, it seems Kyle's goal was to tuck an unseen apparition into the viewer's periphery, under the pretense it's not actually the viewer's periphery, but that of a child. With that established, the rest of the runtime's devoted to completely immersing you in the premise. Low lighting and a choking layer of digital film grain applied after filming suggests movement in every dark corner and allows the discernible imagery to morph into indiscernible and back again, over and over. The actors are rarely on screen, and if you do see them, you're only shown a part of them, and it's usually from the most voyeuristic of angles and distances. That adds an additional layer of uncanny to the atmosphere. As the children watch TV from the floor and the couch, they hear weird noises and voices. Sometimes the voice is thick and low, and it tells the children to do things. Other times, they hear their parents' voices, but the sounds and their silhouetted shapes are anything but encouraging or soothing. When the children themselves speak, you can't make most of it out, and at times you're provided subtitles to deliver the dialogue. But the wording's always partial or incomplete, which forces you to interpret the broken bits of dialogue as implications, which is basically the same thing you're doing with the imagery. As for the soundtrack, he recorded it after the fact and laid it on top of a long series of pops and hisses to add to the authenticity of the movie's look. In addition, he lifts a sound from a number of cartoons so old they become public domain, and he contorts them just enough to warp the innocence right out of them.
The shite bits.
In traditional horror movie terms, there's nothing here. There's no plot twists, no structure, no themes, no narrative, no real acting, the dialogue's minimal, the characters have no visible arcs, and you're denied any opportunity to connect with any of them. The cinematography is intentionally terrible because it's not trying to dazzle you. It's trying to convince your mind to leave the movie and go somewhere else, somewhere even darker. A huge chunk of the footage feels like a replication of your field of vision during a Sunday afternoon couch nap. There's very little to focus on, and that encourages your head to wander frequently. And everything I've mentioned here happens over and over for the entire hour and 40 minutes, making it a challenging watch for very different reasons than your typical scary horror movie. Finally, for the shite bits, this movie was made for $15,000. When you watch it, you're likely to wonder what the hell Kyle spent the money on. Having said that, it goes without saying, when you make a movie on a low budget, you have to get creative. When you make a movie on a micro budget, you have to be flat out inventive. Kyle managed to come up with something unique despite having no money, and that goes a long way. In lieu of all the traditional elements I've just pointed out as missing in the shite bits section, you could argue Skinamarink makes up for it by cranking the remaining elements up to full blast. There's no plot, but the cinematography's laser focused. Its sole purpose is to transport you to a location you cannot reach through regular physical means. There's barely any dialogue, but the words we are presented with are potent. They're suggestive, and they imply without stating anything. That engages the audience directly. It allows them to imagine, and that's something crucial to any scary movie's success. The same can be said for the soundtrack. If you were to stick it on in your car, your passenger would probably think there's something wrong with your head, but it complements the footage perfectly. The two of them function symbiotically to the extent neither of them would work without the other.
When you take all of this into consideration, it leaves you asking the obvious question: does it work?
If you're able to follow this movie down its slow and peculiar pathway, it may evoke some very unique and unexpected emotional responses from you. It's a sensory experience, and if you're open to that sort of thing in a movie theater setting, you might be one of the people who find this movie scary. But if you're a fan of traditional, straightforward, beginning, middles, and ends horror movies with human beings interacting with each other and running away from a tangible monster, you might not make it through this movie at all.
For me personally, I appreciate Kyle's efforts to make something with very little backing. I also recognize Skinamarink's unique properties. He's attempted to turn one of the safest places for the most vulnerable of us into a cloudy nightmare, and that's no simple task. So in some ways, I do agree with the notion that films like this only come along once in a generation, but that's not necessarily a positive thing. If you don't want to hear my personal thoughts on the movie, thank you for watching and click away now. Otherwise,
as a wannabe amateur editor myself, this movie felt like somebody hit record on their cell phone camera and kicked it up and down the hallway for an hour and edited the results. The constant low light and simple shots of nothing in particular put me to sleep several times during both of my viewings. A lot of the scenes replicated something I've not endured since my college days. It's a unique sensation you might experience if you've ever woken up in a dark room after coming home from a night of excessive drinking. You're not able to locate your bedroom door, never mind the toilet down the hall, and your closet usually ends up paying the price. I said earlier, this movie has all the pre-release markings of the original Blair Witch project. Low budget. It's independently produced. It's being hyped as something completely new and absolutely terrifying. When the Blair Witch project released, the pre-release hype raked in loads of cash, but the actual movie split horror audiences right down the middle. Some fans got it, and some fans despised it. I'm going to suggest Skinamarink will do the exact same thing for the very same reasons. We horror fans are permanently ravenous for something new and unique. Both Blair Witch and Skinamarink tick that box. But both movies also deviate so far from their contemporary counterparts in terms of horror conventions, they've removed things lots of horror fans not only love, but expect.
In simple language, the Blair Witch Project was so unconventional it alienated half of its audience, and by comparison, Skinamarink is even less conventional. Am I saying it's a guaranteed flop? Hell no! And don't put words in my mouth. It's already created such a stir in the horror community that people are going to want to check this out for themselves regardless, and I recommend you do the same. Who knows? You might end up being one of the people terrified by this movie. And after all, isn't that the point? Until next time, folks. It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!